Well, welcome everyone to today's session. And my name is Beth Gardner. I'm the Director of Instructional Design at Artis Senior Living. I want to thank you for joining us today for this great session that we're going to have. And it's to help you identify barriers to engagement, understand the impact of brain changes, and identify categories of time use and the importance of balanced time use. Our presenter, Rebekah Wilson, is a dementia care specialist, trainer, and owner of Aging Care Coach LLC. She has over 20 years of experience in elder care services, including hospice, home care, assisted living, and care management. She's proud to serve as an independent contractor working with Teepa Snow's positive approach to care as a mentor for certification courses, as well as part of the counseling team for families. So without further ado, welcome Rebekah and take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. It looks like we've got a lot of folks who are not on screen, and that is totally fine. I think this was set up as a webinar, so we didn't expect to see your faces, but if you want to share your faces, we're happy to see whoever's here. So yes, thank you to Beth and the team at Artis. I was invited to talk about engagement. And certainly this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I will share that I had a loved one living with dementia when I was in my teens, my teenage years, and we certainly did not know how to best support her. And so we certainly made some mistakes along the way and had some unrealistic expectations along the way as well. And so I love to be able to talk with family members and say, how can you better connect with your loved one? Because I think that's what we all want, is to make that meaningful connection with our loved one. So we'll talk about how do we do that? And also, how are some of the brain changes that we see actually impacting our ability to make that connection? So what I'll tell you, we're going to start with, how do you spend your time? I want to ask you guys to make, if you have in front of you a piece of paper, and I want you to make a circle on a piece of paper. And this is going to be interactive. So this isn't just me yapping at you for an hour. This is going to be interactive. I'm going to guide you through this experience. If you can find a piece of paper and a pen, I'll give you a second to do that, so you didn't know that that was an expectation before you got here. If you can make a circle on a piece of paper, and we're going to make a pie chart. And we're going to look at how each of you spend your days. And we're going to put your day in certain categories. So these categories of time that we're going to look at are rest and restoration. So think sleeping, resting, self-care, and that means a different thing for many different people, self-care. The third category is fun recreation. And then the fourth category is purposeful or productive activities. Okay. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to make that pie chart of how you yourself spend your days on average. So you might have a bigger pie piece for fun or rest. So looking at 24 hours in a day, how do you spend your day? And I'm going to stop talking and let you do that. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to make your pie chart. I'll show you mine. I did this as well before we came on today. And so I'll show you my productive is the purple. And you'll notice that's almost about half of my time in a day is doing something productive or purposeful. I have a pretty big blue chunk here of rest and restoration. I have some self-care, this red piece, about a little less than a quarter of the piece, a quarter of the pie, and then a much smaller slice of pie here for fun and recreation. So I'm curious if you have the chat open and if you're open to sharing, I'd be curious if you can write in the chat which was the bigger piece of the puzzle. So for instance, I'm going to write in the chat productive. And so if you're open to sharing, where was your biggest piece of pie? Beth also shared purpose and productive. Productive. Okay, so we've got a lot of people who are getting it done, right? And that feels good. That is what gives us life. Most of us is feeling that idea that we're doing something, we're giving back, we're contributing to the world around us. So that's your pie. And now on your piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to draw another circle, or maybe flip it over to the back if you made a big circle. And I want you to make a second pie chart. And this is thinking about the person that you are providing care for, the person that brought you to this webinar today, the person that maybe you're supporting who is living with brain change. And we're going to make a similar pie, looking at how do they spend their time, but we're adding a fifth category of time. We're adding a fifth category of time, and that is waiting time. So we still have rest and restoration, self-care, fun, productive or purposeful. And now we've got that fifth element of waiting. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do your pie chart for your loved one. So hopefully you had a chance to do that pie chart really quickly. What did you notice is different? And you can feel free to unmute and share or write it in the chat. What was their biggest category of time? So rest, purpose section was much smaller. Yeah. Rest, a lot of rest. So when I first did this activity, I held someone in mind, a resident of mine who I was supporting at the time. And certainly his biggest category was waiting. And I really kind of looking at my pie chart versus Gary's pie chart, I was really kind of sad and a little bit shocked at how much of the time, and I had never really thought about how much of his time was spent in waiting. And I actually got this activity from one of my mentors, Teepa Snow. Some of you may have heard of her. She's an international dementia guru. And I have the pleasure of working with her as an independent contract with her company, Positive Approach to Care. And she taught this activity. And it was really an eye-opening moment for me to think about, why is there so much waiting time in his day? Why is there so much waiting time in the days of people who are living with dementia? And how can we shift that? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not really good at waiting. I mean, like, how many of us would go, waiting is my absolute favorite activity ever? I mean, liar, liar, pants on fire. You are not, like, none of us really enjoy that. And it happens for multiple reasons. And it's not just, the fault of the caregiver. It's part of the disease. One of the symptoms of dementia is changes in sequencing and processing through activities. So it's my ability to start an activity, to function through the steps of an activity, to finish the activity and to move on. And that those steps can each start to have challenges. And the first one, that initiating activity. So oftentimes family members will say to me, Rebekah, my mom used to always love to do this. Or my husband used to love to fill in the blank. And whatever activity it was, whether it was playing the piano or, going for a walk or whatever the activity is, the care partner will share they don't do that anymore. And so I love to work with families and talk about why is that changing. And part of it is that ability, I call it your start button. So like if you had a start button on you and someone pushed your start button, said, all right, let's go do this. Because what I've seen when I work with folks living with brain change is I may say, hey, Joe, you want to go for a walk? And he'll say, yeah, that sounds good. Or yeah, let's go. And then just sit there. All right, Joe, let's go for a walk. Come on. Yep. And then he just sits there. All right, Joe, we're going to go for a walk. Yeah. And Joe's ready to go, but still just sitting there in the chair. And it's, I really learned through this process of initiation, and Joe wants to do this activity, but it's that getting it started that can be a challenge. And so what I learned was giving that short, simple, step-by-step. Okay, Joe, let's sit up in the chair. Okay, nice. Ooh, stretch. How does that feel? Okay. All right, Joe, let's pull your feet back so they're under your knees. All right. All right, Joe, on 3, we're going to stand up. Okay. 1, rock, 2, rock, 3. Yeah. Okay. Now let's go. And giving those visuals of let's go. And getting Joe up and out of the chair was the biggest challenge. Now we're going, and that sequencing through that next step, we're walking. It's good. When we look at that last piece where I said we finish an activity and move on, this is also a place where you may have experienced your loved ones getting stuck. And what does that look like? It looks like a family who told me that their loved one, they can get to the piano and play the piano, but they play the same song for 12 hours straight. And they can't finish and move on to the next. So that doesn't seem like that big of a deal maybe for you and I. Okay, look, they're playing the piano, that's great. But that caregiver who's hearing that same song for 12 hours straight, that can be very frustrating. And so there it's when we teach and I coach families through this idea of you finish the song, yay, nice job, good song. Hey, mom, let's go do this. And right in that moment is that moment where you as a care partner have to be able to jump in, help them make that transition to the next activity. And that takes a lot of skills. That takes a lot of skills. And you may raise your hand right now and say, hey, Rebekah, listen, this is all new to me. And I'm tired and exhausted, and I don't have the creativity and the skills. And I hear you. I do. As I said from the very beginning, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in our short time together today are things that I didn't know. But I believe strongly that when we know better, we can do better. And so if you just have the willingness to say, I'm going to try something different, because I know that you guys want to connect with your loved ones. That's why you're here on this webinar today. You want to connect. But our loved ones, maybe they're not sure what to do. They're experiencing that loss of initiation, and the environment isn't really clear to them. So my message to you is you're not alone. And I have been where you are, as I've said repeatedly. So let me tell you what my visits used to look like with my grandmother. So I'm a little type A. Can anyone relate to type A personality? And oh, thanks, Jean. Yeah, I appreciate your willingness to say it. My belief as a family care partner, I have very high expectations of myself. And even though I was like a senior in high school, But I would drive over to my grandmother's facility, and I had this expectation. I don't know where it came from. This is just our type A personality that came out. And my expectation was, you ready for it? A good granddaughter, quotes, a good granddaughter would visit her grandmother 3 to 4 times a week for at least an hour. And that was my expectation of myself. Now, I didn't know much about dementia at all. I just thought she's got memory issues. That's all I knew about dementia at the time. And I would go in to visit her, and here was our interaction. Okay, think about that waiting piece that we just talked about. She had been waiting. She had been sitting around. She didn't know I was coming. And all of a sudden I would show up with my, 17-year-old energy, wanting to connect with my grandmother. Here we go. And I would, probably race in, probably had too much caffeine. And I would say, hey, Grand Mary, how's your day? And she'd give that automatic social chit chat that we all can do, even with dementia. And she'd say, what do you think? Fine, thanks. And you, right? Something very social chit chat. And I would say, hey, well, what did you do today? Sit there. I don't know. And some of you are probably like rolling your eyes at me because you've had a similar experience where you've had this attempt to engage. And then I would say, well, what'd you have for lunch? And I was trying to tap into it was just social conversation. But what I know now is that was a short-term memory. And she couldn't remember what she had for lunch. So she would say, I don't know. And then I would say, well, did you have lunch? And she would say, you know what? I don't know. Right. And so I was that annoying granddaughter knocking on the administrator's door. Knock, knock. Beth, hey, are you in charge here? I don't think my grandmother got lunch today. And those poor administrators and staff people probably just rolled their eyes and said, oh, goodness. Because I was asking questions and trying to relate about a lot of short-term memory stuff. And so that wasn't successful. And finally, my sweet little Southern Belle grandmother would look at her watch. She'd still wear a watch, and she'd look at her watch and she'd say, well, sweetheart, isn't there somewhere that you need to be? Isn't there somewhere that you need to be? Oh, sweetheart, thanks for coming by. I'm sure you've got somewhere else you need to be. What was she telling me? Translate that from dementia to non-dementia. Get out of here. You're driving me crazy already, lady, with all these questions. I was peppering her with questions, but I was just trying to connect. And so I tell you that I've dealt with this. This isn't because I was hoping you guys would be my therapy for the day. I've dealt with this. I know, but I share it because I want you to know if you're doing this right now, I get it. You're not alone. We've all been there. And what I'm hoping that you can take away from today is some opportunities of how can I connect, not in those traditional ways, because the person's brain is changing. Their brain is changing. They can't control it. We can't control it, but we can adapt to meet their needs. So here's my loved one living with dementia, and here's me. And all I want to do is make this connection. But it's going to take my skills and my ability to connect a little bit differently than the way that we used to. Because if we keep doing things the way that we did, then we weren't going to be as successful. And that's what I learned in retrospect. And I hope that you can learn moving forward. Your loved one is not just trying to drive you crazy. They're not trying to be difficult. We're just needing a new way to connect. And so why does this happen? Because their brain is changing. So let's look at some visuals of this. This is a visual that may be a lot to take for some of you. This is 2 autopsied brains. The brain on the left is a gentleman both of these guys, let me start by saying this. Both of these gentlemen prior to death were the same age. They were the same basic build, like weight and height. They had the same head circumference. But the person on the left died in an automobile accident, and the person on the right died from advanced Alzheimer's disease. And so when we look at these pictures and we think about, if I'm trying to connect with my loved one, like their brain is on the left, that healthy, plump brain, and I'm not adapting to what's really going on in their brain, looking at that brain on the right and going, now I'm trying to connect with my loved one whose brain is changing. So I'm going to pause for just a second, and I'm curious, looking at these pictures, is there anything that's stirring up in you right now? Anything you want to write in the chat or maybe even unmute and share?
I mean, the one on the left is bigger, obviously, and the spaces between for lack of a better word, I don't know, the blobs, the coils, is smaller. And the one on the right, there's a lot more separation, and it's clearly shrunken, and the edges are, choppier.
Yeah. So Cheryl, you're really noticing the physical changes that are happening in the brain, and that the size is different. Those crevices are bigger, or where that tissue has been lost and died. And so you're noticing, I heard one time from a neurologist, and this really has stuck with me for many, many years. And this visual shows it, that by the time a person dies from dementia, if that's their cause of death, there's some kind of presenting, it could be pneumonia, a fall, something like that, that actually causes death, but they've lived through the advanced stages of dementia, that their brain is about a third of the size of their brain before dementia. So a third of the size, meaning that those cells have gotten sick and they've died and it's shrunk. So kind of a rhetorical question here. How does it work when we still try to connect with that brain on the left when we're dealing with the brain on the right? And so that's where it gets us into some trouble. And I've heard people say, well, it would be much easier if we could actually see those, if someone's brain or their head actually got smaller, if there was some kind of physical way to see that this is happening, because our loved one may look the same, it may sound the same, but their changes are evident to us. And so we can't see it on the outside. If you were caring for someone who didn't have legs, their legs had been amputated for some reason, you wouldn't say, hey, get up and try harder. You can do it. Come on, try harder. Let's walk across the room. You wouldn't do that. You'd say, Rebekah, that's silly. That's unrealistic. And in the same way, as we are supporting someone living with brain change, loving someone who's living with brain change, and we're asking them to connect in the ways that they used to, that's also unrealistic. So how can we change that? So let's talk about that. We're going to talk about a couple of areas of the brain in particular that get us into some trouble with connecting. So the first part is our hippocampus. And so you've probably heard of this part of the brain if you've done any of your research online, learning about the brain. If you were to put your fingers here on your temples, and don't do this, but if you were to push in an inch or so on each side, you're going to hit the hippocampus. There's two. So Latin hippocampi is the plural for hippocampus. So two hippocampi, and that is our learning and memory center. Is the part of our brain that controls that short-term memory, that takes in information and stores it. So I take in information and store it. So earlier today, when we were signing on, Beth, who's my host from Artis Senior Living, she had her name as Beth on the screen today. And I've always seen her emails that say Elizabeth. And so I said, hey, do you prefer Beth? And she said, well, there's a lot of Elizabeths around here. So we go, now my brain took in that information and stored it. Took in that information and stored it. But now if we look at the part of the brain, so it's circled here in the red kind of circle, this is the healthy brain. And on the bottom is the brain with dementia. Those cells have gotten sick and died. And so that ability to store that information, bring it in and store it is changing. So hopefully with a healthy brain, I'm going to remember that Beth prefers to go by Beth, but your loved one can't store that new information. And so you may have situations where they say the same thing or ask you the same question over and over and over, right? Here's what that looks like. Hey, honey, what time are we going to go to lunch? 12 o'clock. Okay, cool. Hey, honey, what time are we going to lunch? Mom, I told you we're going to lunch at 12 o'clock. Hey, sweetheart, what time are we going to lunch? Mom, I said lunch is at 12 o'clock. And how many of us have gotten that to that point? I've told you, remember? And when we look at these pictures of the brain, hopefully it's that wake up call to go, they don't. It's like we poured water in a cup that's got a hole in the bottom. They cannot store and hold on to that information. So for you and I, it's the 15th time we've answered that question, or maybe the 115th time. Because of that, we may start to get frustrated, which starts to impact my ability to connect. When my frustration rises, my loved one will feel that too. And then they're thinking, what's wrong with you? All I did was ask what time lunch was, because they don't remember the first 14 times that they asked that. So learning and remembering, and that's where we get into a lot of challenges, especially with Alzheimer's disease, because the hippocampus is the first part of the brain to change with Alzheimer's disease. And so we see those changes in short-term memory. But also wayfinding abilities. So what is wayfinding? It's my ability to find the way in my home or out of my home, but find my way from here to somewhere else, and then back to home. So for instance, if I go to Target, the grocery store, and then back home, finding my way in a place, or even finding the way in the bathroom in my own home and finding my way back to the living room. So wayfinding abilities also change. And the third piece of the hippocampus, time awareness. Time awareness. So you may go visit your loved one, maybe if they're in a community, or if they're living at home and you go to their house and you say, oh, hey, Mom, it's so good to see you. And they say, well, I thought you didn't care about me anymore. You haven't come to see me in ages. And your brain is going, I was just here yesterday. But for them, that time awareness, they don't remember that you were just here yesterday. And that can be very challenging as a daughter or a son or a spouse. I'm doing the best I can. And it feels like that's not being appreciated or seen. Time awareness changes. So how do you handle a situation like that? Oh, Mom, it doesn't feel like I've been here lately. Gosh, you know what? I've missed seeing you too. Let's make the most of today. I'm joining her journey. She doesn't think that I've been here to see her in a long time. And in my reality, I have. But whose brain is changing? And who's got the healthy brain who can adapt? I've got the healthy brain that can be harder in the moment. So hippocampus is changing. There's also our language abilities. And this is how so many of us connect as human beings. We do this talking thing. Hi, how are you? Fine, thanks, and you? What'd you do today? Blah, blah, blah. Just like I was sharing that I was trying to do with my grandmother. And I didn't realize that not only was the short-term memory changing, but also her language abilities. So I want you to, if you'll play along with me, put your hands up by your head next to your temples. And this is our language centers of our brain. If we were to go in there, that's our language center of our brain. And the left side controls vocabulary. So think about when someone says to you, oh, honey, can you pass me the the thing with ink in it. Oh, the thing you write with. What is that? And some of us are going, oh, wait, I do that. And that can be a normal part of aging too, but also can be a symptom of dementia. This finding words, word finding, vocabulary. That's a part of a skill in our left temporal lobe. It's also our ability to produce speech, to be able to get words out in a coherent sentence structure, and to understand language. So I heard once that by the time someone's in the moderate stages of dementia, so mid-dementia, that they lose 1 out of every 4 words that we say to them. So 1 out of every 4 words gets lost in translation, so to speak. So if I'm using a lot of language and I'm talking a lot to my loved one, they're only getting or 3/4 of every bit, and maybe even less if they're beyond moderate dementia. How do I want to use the words? I want to use less words. I want to keep it short and simple. I want to maybe use gestures instead. Hey, would you like coffee? Or maybe use visuals. Would you like coffee or water? Coffee or water? Pretend I have a water glass here. Coffee or water, right? And so I'll start to use visuals. Yes, Nancy said slow down my communication. Thank you for that. That is so important because I need to slow down my words without dementia. Some of us, we talk like we've had way too many Starbucks coffees in the morning, and we just go through life and we're boop, 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 boop. And our loved one is processing much more slowly. So I want to give that time to process in order to make a connection. And here's the hardest part about this is not only slowing down, but then here's the big one, waiting for the answer. Waiting. Research shows that it can take up to 90 seconds for someone to process a question that we ask them and be able to answer it back. So again, let's go back to that analogy. Hey, Mom, would you like coffee or water? And then I wait.
Is that kind of mid-stage also?
90 seconds would be, thank you for that question. 90 seconds would be more advanced, but think
Okay.
maybe 30 seconds, mid 20 to 30 seconds.
Okay.
And the best way to gauge this is to, do it once.
Right.
And this will change from day to day. Thank you for this question, because it could change based on how much sleep I got. If I'm a morning person or a night owl, it could be factors,
Yeah.
so many different factors that are going to impact it. But if I say coffee or water and I truly just sit there and wait, and then my loved one says water, I'm going to do a little bit of calculation in my head. How long did that take? And then I'm going to slow down and maybe give that much time every time I ask a question, because they've told me how much time they need at that point. But most of us in that moment, when we don't know better, we're going to say it again, and we're going to say it louder, right? Mom, coffee or water? Hey, Mom, coffee or water? How many of us have done this? Yeah. And every time we ask the question again, think it's starting that timer over. And so giving not only us talking slowly, but giving them time to process it and answer and give their response. So communication really gets into we get into a lot of challenges making a connection, particularly when our way of connection has typically been through verbal. So how can I find ways of connecting that aren't based on conversation? I think about now, if I had gone in to visit my grandmother and I had brought her a milkshake and just started with, oh, let's see, I brought us a treat. I brought you one and I've got one too. Isn't this delicious?
You could have never known that as a teenager.
I know.
You could have
and
never known that as a teenager.
But I'm hoping that you guys can take away this to go, wow, what can I
Right.
do differently? Could I have used music? Could I have used, soft and sweet foods? Could I have used an activity? Maybe, she did love to cook, and maybe we couldn't cook a meal, but could we have, brought in spices for her to smell? There's so many different ways that we can make that connection beyond words, when words are starting to change. Let's talk about the final piece of the brain that I want us to visit today, and that is our executive control center. And it's the front part of our brain, our frontal lobe, and it has all these skills, 6 skills. Impulse control. How many of you have noticed that your loved ones are doing and saying things that they never would have done or said before? My sweet Southern Belle grandmother was cursing like a drunken sailor, as we say, with dementia. Words we didn't even know that she knew. And now she was using them with great fluency and frequency. She would say things that might be hurtful about someone's weight or what they're wearing. It was just that impulse control that you and I have, that no, don't say that to that person, changes with dementia. Again, they're doing the best they can. We can, as much as possible, try not to take that personally, knowing that that's a part of the brain that's changing. The front part of our brains also our reasoning and logic. So for you and I with healthy brains, if you couldn't find something important to you, I can't find my pocketbook, I can't find my purse, my wallet, where is it? My brain is going to think through, all right, where did I have it last? When did I use it last? I'm going to use logic and reasoning to kind of think through a situation. Whereas someone living with dementia, that logic isn't so natural. Those pieces don't come together as naturally. So now it may be, I can't find my pocketbook. Well, I bet someone stole my pocketbook. Oh, well, I better find the boss around here because I need to tell him that somebody stole my pocket. You stole my pocketbook, Beth. Now I've jumped from, I can't find my pocketbook, to it's missing, someone stole it. You stole it. That logic is changing, that reasoning ability. And you and I are going to go, never take your stuff, right? And yet this part of the brain is changing. It's also decision making. Now, I bet some of you have had this experience where you had your loved one maybe out for a meal and you say, all right, Mom, what do you want to order? You look at that menu, and the Cheesecake Factory is the one that always makes me giggle because it's like a 30-page menu at that. Some restaurants, it's just way too many choices. And I think about how overwhelming that is for someone with dementia. And so they'll give us answers like, I'll have what you're having. Or, I don't really care. Just order for me. That decision-making is challenged. So now how do I want to empower my person to make that decision for themselves? I know my loved one. I'm going to say something like, I know she likes cheeseburgers and I know she likes meatloaf. So I'm going to give those 2 options. Hey, would you like cheeseburger or meatloaf today? What sounds good to you? 2 options that I know we can't go wrong with, and let her choose so that she does feel empowered, but also making it a failure-free activity or a failure-free choice for her. Decision-making, we talked about sequencing. Self-awareness, that's an interesting piece that's changing too. And I want to talk about that because I think the changes in self-awareness impact our ability to connect with our loved ones. So what does that mean? Someone with dementia may not be able to see themselves as clearly as you and I do, meaning they may or may not know that they have dementia. And I've had family members say to me, well, if she would just understand, that she's got Alzheimer's and she can't live alone anymore. And I appreciate that thought, but the very fact of not knowing that they have dementia is a symptom of dementia. for about half of people living with brain change. It's a fancy medical term called anosognosia. And what that means is I don't recognize the changes in myself. I don't recognize the changes that I have. And you can tell me you've got Alzheimer's, but I'm not going to be able to understand that. And so their ability to recognize changes in themselves is not there for about half of people. Now, other people, they are more aware. I've got a friend who's living with early onset Alzheimer's, and she's able to talk about it and talk about her fears and her frustrations and what works for her and what doesn't work for her. But that's not always the case. And so that anosognosia is a big piece of challenges in connecting a lot of times between the person living with brain change and their care partners. And that final skill, I'm going to look at my own self-awareness here, and then I'm going to look at someone else's point of view. And that changes with dementia. My ability to see someone else's perspective. So many of you are you've been caregiving for quite some time, and your loved one probably doesn't recognize all that you're doing to support them. They're not able to recognize your point of view, that you're doing the best that you can, that you're heartbroken over this disease, that you were there yesterday when they say, wow, you haven't come to visit me in a long time. And so them not being able to recognize your point of view can also create some disconnect with our loved ones. So these changes happen, and we get into this, I want to support my loved one, I want to connect with my loved one, but these things are happening. So the confusion, the sensory changes, all of those memory parts of the brain that we talked about that are changing. But what can we do? What can we do to make those connections better? And this is a hard one. I admitted to you guys I'm a type A, but think about what is really important in our connection. And my connecting with my loved one is more important than perfection. Now hold that for a second. Connection is more important than perfection. What does that mean? Well, sometimes people will say, I'd love to have my mom help, but she'll probably get the recipe wrong, and it's just easier for me to do it myself. And then when I talk to that person and they say, the daughter, and my mom always loved to cook, but now I just tell her to go sit down, I'll take care of it. Well, is there something that mom can do that can feel like she's purposeful and feels like she's contributing to the family, even if it's not perfect? Can she cut up the lettuce or, piece out lettuce and make a salad, maybe cut some bell peppers, or maybe what can she do now safely to contribute? With me letting go, is this going to be perfect in the end? Can we work on quilting because she used to love to quilt and maybe it's not perfect, or maybe we have to minimize it and do it on a smaller scale, or something with her hands that make her feel important, make her feel like she's doing something good, but it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the way that it used to be because their brain is changing. So another piece is think about quality over quantity. So go back to when I said that type A expectation of myself as a teenager was, I said 3 to 4 times a week for how long? Do you remember? An hour. An hour. And for me, that was like the minimum of what I should say. But now that I know better, and hopefully you guys know this as well, is that even an hour was going to push her abilities at that moment. That shorter visits throughout the week, shorter visits of really connecting are going to mean more than long drawn out. And so we're heading into the holidays. And I'm really thankful that Artis asked me to do this presentation at this time, because I know I hear a lot of families. I get calls and emails from a lot of family members after the holidays or during the holidays, between Thanksgiving and the December holidays, where the wheels just kind of come off of things, right? And we try to get mom out. Maybe she's in a facility and she's comfortable there, and we take her out for Thanksgiving, and we're going to keep her over at Betty Jo's house, her daughter, Betty Jo. We're going to keep her over at Betty Jo's for a few hours. And then about 20 minutes into the visit, she's saying, okay, I'm ready to go home. Okay, I'm ready to go home. I want to go back now. I want to go back to my place. And we're like, oh, no, we just got here. And what you and I expect as far as quantity being more valuable, it's really about quality at this point. So as you're heading into the holidays, if your loved one is in a facility or at home, I would really encourage you to think about, what are the holidays going to look like? How can you simplify that last statement here on the screen? Calm over busy. I mean, I don't know about you, but a lot of my holiday gatherings are chaotic with children around, running around, pets. There's so much overstimulation for a healthy brain, much less when you take dementia into the picture. When dementia is in the picture, we really need to think about those small, meaningful moments. Calm over busy. Thinking about what is their best time of day. Avoiding overstimulation. Has this person always been a night owl or morning person? When are the visits best for them? Not for me, but for them. If I'm wanting to make a connection, how can I make the visit as meaningful as I can by thinking about what time of day and the length of time? And then a few just kind of key pieces about our actual approach. So when I'm approaching someone, so say that Beth is who I'm supporting as a care partner, and I am trying to get Beth engaged in an activity. I want to be physically where Beth can see me. And one of the things that changes with dementia, and we could do a whole hour presentation on this itself, is vision changes. And again, my mentor, Teepa Snow, talks a lot about vision and how as we age, our vision changes and it starts to narrow in. And so if you'll play along with me, you don't have to if you don't want to, but this is what we call scuba vision. So scuba vision starts to happen with aging. Our vision changes with aging, and then dementia on top of it. Our peripheral vision narrows. And so we're starting to see almost what you would see looking through a scuba mask. So if I'm wanting to engage with someone, I want to get in front of them where they can actually see me and read my lips. They can see me, see my face, not this where we're talking from the other room. Come on, Mom, we're doing this in here. Some of you have done that. I want to be where they can see me, approach from the front, smile, soften my voice. And now here's something I want to say about voice. Please don't use that high-pitched baby talk voice that some of us use, like when we're talking to a baby or a pet. That is what we call elder speak. It can be disrespectful. I want to talk to someone just like I'm talking to you right now. So I may soften my voice and use less words, but I'm not sugary sweet kind of thing. That is not what we're looking for. So if I'm working with Beth, I'm going to say, hey, Beth, hey, it's Rebekah. Hey, give her that time to process. Beth, they're making cookies in the kitchen. Let's go. So short and simple instructions. I'm inviting her to engage with me in front of her, smile and soft voice. And then I'm saying, let's go, instead of, would you like to go? Now, is it wrong to say, would you like to go? Not necessarily. Choice is always a good thing. But here's what I would say to you. Don't ask a yes or no question if you're not willing to accept no as the answer. Make sense? So if I say, do you want to go to lunch? I have to be willing to take no as the answer. Do you want to means you have, you've got choices there. Instead, I'm going to say, hey, let's go to lunch. And it kind of initiates that movement. Let's go. Can they still say no? Absolutely, of course. But let's go instead of do you want to? Because again, part of that change that happens in dementia is that initiation. And so it's easier to sit here. It's easier to sit here in my chair comfortably than to get up and go do the things that you want to engage me in. It's easier. I don't make mistakes sitting here in my chair. People don't ask me questions that I can't answer if I'm sitting here in my chair. And so this becomes a safe place for me to be. And when you come along and you want me to go do these things, I'm going to have to be able to feel safe doing that as well. So how can we encourage or invite engagement in a failure-free way? Music is a great way to make connections. I mean, we could do, hours and hours of talking about music. There's so much research out there about music being one of the last things to change in the brain of a person living with dementia, so that it's a part of that right temporal lobe. So earlier when I had you put your hands here, and that left temporal lobe was vocabulary, speech production, and understanding. Well, a skill on the right that's impacted later in the disease, very late in the disease, is rhythm and music. So if you haven't tried music with your loved ones, singing, "You Are My Sunshine," "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," music from a person's late teens and 20s tends to be the most meaningful for them throughout their life. So why do I say that? It's not the music that I want to listen to, but it's from their late teens and 20s. So I may have to go learn some old songs that I didn't know before so that I can match them up. What was their favorite style of music? What was their favorite artist? And slow down the music, trying some engagement with music. I think you'll find it really powerful. So if you haven't, just Google search music and dementia. You'll find a whole world of information about music and dementia. So if you haven't tried that, please do. And if any of you have examples, I'd love to hear from you about using music. A couple of other to-dos, maybe things to try, and I'll open it up for questions here in a second. One step at a time, those familiar objects, keeping choices limited. Again, not what do you want for lunch, but hey, are you thinking salad today, soup, or a sandwich? It's limiting those choices. And what are some ways to just make some connections? What did your person enjoy doing before? As my mentor, Teepa Snow, says, the person is who they are. So I am who I am, but I'm changing. I am who I am, but I'm changing. So what did your person used to love to do? And how can you bring that to them in a failure-free way now? Looking at photographs, maybe just sitting there with a warm cup of coffee is such just an experience in itself, right? Going for a walk outside, telling stories, not asking them a lot about the story. So not, "Mom, do you remember the time that?" No, not that. We're not going to ask a lot of them, but maybe instead I'm going to tell a story. "Hey, Mom, I remember when we were little and we would go to the beach, and you were always so fun. We would build sandcastles, and I bet you just wanted to relax, but you would sit there and you'd build sandcastles with us. Thank you, Mom. That really meant a lot." And now I'm reminding her of her success, reminding her of great things that she's done, and reminding her of shared experiences that we've had, not asking a lot of questions of her, but telling her the story and reflecting back who she is, who she was, and who she is. That can be a great way to make a connection. Things are going to get hard sometimes. Maybe they are exhausted. Maybe they start to say things that are hurtful because that filter starts to change. As much as possible, can you remember they're doing the best they can with a brain that is changing? And I'm the one with the healthy brain. So how can I shift And remember that my goal is to connect. That's my goal. I just want to connect. And so if connecting isn't working through conversation, how can I shift my approach and try a different way to make a meaningful connection with my loved one? Your person still feels love. They still feel safe. They still feel included and connected. There's a quote by Maya Angelou that I'll just end with. And it is, she said that people will forget what you say. People will forget what you did, but they won't forget the way that you made them feel. I love that. I'm going to say it again.
Mhm.
People will forget what you say. They'll forget what you did, but they won't forget the way you made them feel. And so when we put that into the context of dementia, how can we help our loved one feel those positive feelings and not feel like we're setting them up for failure? When we're asking too much of their brain, think about those 2 slides on the brain, the healthy brain and the brain of someone who died with advanced Alzheimer's disease. Now, this is all very easier said than done. I get it. And that's why I did just include a little bit here on your self-care too, because you can't have a topic about caregiving without saying this is a really hard journey for caregivers. You're not alone, but this feels incredibly hard. I know it does. And that's why groups like Artis Senior Living, who are having these programs, there are support groups in your area, there's support available. And I hope you're reaching out for it to know that you aren't alone in this journey. You are not alone. And so thank you. I want you to reach up and pat yourself on the back for being here today, because you took time for yourself. You took time for your loved one, in a sense, by being here to learn a little bit about dementia. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you can bring some joy back in your relationship. And thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for making time for yourself and for your loved one by being here today. So I'll leave my information up here on the screen for a few minutes or seconds. And then does anyone have a burning question that you think might be applicable to everyone here? I'm happy to stay for a few minutes and answer questions. Or please know that wherever you got this information from an Artis Senior Living facility or a contact person through Artis Senior Living, please reach out to them. They want to help you get access to resources and support for your caregiving journey.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the pictures of the real brain, because so much we either see the cartoony ones or the actual MRIs that mean nothing to us. We don't need to know how to read those things.
Yeah.
And that this black dot's this and that, so I really, and I've looked at a lot of these for a lot of years. And I just really appreciated the real organ.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah, I think that those visuals can be
Mhm.
really shocking.
Mhm.
But when we're in that moment of expecting more of our loved one, we go back to, I need to remember what their brain looks like.
Mhm.
Thanks, Nancy.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it pertains to this specifically. My mother, thankfully, is at an Artis memory care facility, and she is thriving. We love Olney Memory Care. But the question that I have, and I've gotten variety of answers on this, how do you suggest responding when the person with dementia is asking about people that have passed away, that have been gone for many, many years?
Yeah.
I've heard that telling them they're dead or they're gone is putting them through grief again.
Yeah.
But I've noticed as my mother has progressed, the best way to answer it now is just to say that that person is fine. No, they can't come visit you because they're away on vacation, something like that. But if you could help me out in that department.
Yeah. So good question, Jean. And we actually had a session for professionals earlier today, and I did I showed some videos on that where a person's saying, you know, where's my mom? And as the caregiver says, you know, oh, your mom's dead. And, you know, that reality orienting piece and how that would feel to experience that multiple times a day. If I'm asking, where's my mom? I can't remember that she died. You're telling me that she's dead. So I kind of experienced that grief like multiple times every time I answer or get that answer. So when I hear about someone, you know, repeating a question, something like, where's my loved one? I want to look at what is that unmet need? What is that? They're telling me they have a need. What is that need that they have that's unmet? For your person, is it that was who was always comfort for them? Was it someone that they, you know, enjoyed being around? Do they just need to feel loved and connected? So if they're saying, you know, where's my spouse or where's my mom or whoever it might be, I'm going to, as a care partner, translate that in my head to say, they're telling me that they need to feel connected. They need whatever it was that that person means to them. So how can I, in this moment, substitute for that? I can't be the person who's no longer here, but how can I substitute and give them what they need in this moment? And so I'm not going to get into the facts. Think about like an iceberg. Like the question is that's showing, the question that's showing of the iceberg is, where's my person? But what's underneath that is a need to feel connected and loved. So instead of, well, they're dead or they can't come, I'm really not even going to answer the question specifically. I'm going to reflect back. So can you tell me which family member it is, Jean? I mean, which person are they asking for? Their husband, spouse?
She's asking for her mother.
Or her mom. Okay.
Yes.
So for instance, she'll say, hey, when's I'm looking for my mom. So I'm going to say, you're looking for your mom. Just validate and reflect that back. I hear you. I'm going to reflect it back. I hear you. You're looking for your mom. She loves you so much. You guys have a really special relationship and you're wanting her right now. You know what?
Nice.
She can't be here right now, but I bet if she could be, she'd want to give you a hug. Can I give you a hug for her?
Okay.
Something like that. Or, you know what? Your mom was the best cookie maker. Let's go try to make some cookies thinking about your mom. Now, I'm not answering the tip of the iceberg question of where is she?
Right.
I'm not getting myself into lies or she's coming later, or telling her that she's dead. Nothing. What I'm trying to do is meet that unmet need that's bubbling under the surface, which is that need to connect and that need for love.
Excellent.
Hopefully.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing the question. I know that we're over, and I always want to be respectful of time, especially for caregivers who are, maybe you stole this hour away. And so I want to be respectful and end on time, but please reach out to Artis. Please reach out to me if you have questions, or know that whoever, again, told you about this webinar today, I know they want to help you as well. So you're not alone. Keep the faith and take care of yourself, guys. Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.